Today was a fantastic day. Not only did we get part three to arguably the greatest animated TV show we have ever seen, but my ASU did defeat, specifically upset, the BYU today in college football. So, I had to bring back out the Arizona State James Harden jersey for this. And then I did pop a bottle of wine while I was watching Arcane this morning. So I'm gonna finish this Italian. Was it Sangiovese? I probably butchered that shit, but who cares? Um, you know, here's what I'm drinking and being a little fancy lad. But yeah, so let's get on right into it. Pretty much same old, same old. Obviously, we will go over some of the ratings and then we'll go over the rest. So, critics pretty much all agree. Masterpiece 100%. I thought his rating, it's at 92, which is lower than season one, actually, with 5,000 ratings and a 97%. So, a lot of people liking season one a lot more than season two. And I will go over some of the um, complaints about season two in the spoiler section, but some of them are valid, and I think a lot of them are just people kind of wanting more and then being mad that there's not technically a season three, even though we're getting three other projects worth of Arcane lore. Basically, they're basically just Arcane, but they're being labeled different things in their spin-offs, and they're going to take place in other parts of the world and not, was it Piltover, I think, is what the entire top and bottom side is. But either way, so still very well received. um oh, that's the combined rating. For a second I thought I was hallucinating, this was the season two rating, but no, this is just the combined rating. But still, like, when you have, even with the 92 and 100, when you still have that like sub 10%, still really good to see. And then here, I'm gonna go through, kind of give non-spoiler summaries for each episode and kind of stuff that I did and didn't like about them, um, if I can, because the later episodes, obviously, there's so much shit in there that, like, you can't really go non-spoilerly without going, or you can't really talk about it too much without going into spoilers. So, uh, first episode's pretty easy to rank, or pretty easy to rate and talk about, just because they show the direct impact of Jinx's terrorist attack at the end of season one, with episode one specifically showing Topside, and episode two focusing on, or episode one focusing on Jinx and Vi and Jace and Mel and basically everyone on Topside. When you want episode two focusing mainly on Jinx and bottom side, or I guess Undercity, or whatever the fuck you want to call it. And then episode three is the culmination of all of them, and this was, oh man, I love this episode so much. Within, like, all three of these episodes, really great animation. The music is also just extremely on point. The way they use the music with the different animation styles to depict different emotions is completely amazing. The storytelling, the writing has been absolutely phenomenal in this series. And the fights in this episode were absolutely fantastic. I thought they were really well written, which is kind of a rarity to see nowadays. But episode three was just, again, a culmination of the first two episodes, along with a obvious confrontation. And with the next few episodes, you kind of get essentially the same thing, where I'm going to give this, it's hard because I really want to give it a 9, but I also wasn't like too huge on this episode. But I think I'll just give this one an 8. And then This one I'll give a 9. But either way, again, both kind of perspective episodes of the aftermath of the end of part 1. So you kind of get to see those along with setting up things for the end of part 2, along with going into part 3, which is where you kind of get into episode 6 being that culmination. This was easily my favorite episode of the season. A lot of people's favorite episode. Obviously, it's the highest ranked episode of the series, and it was just absolutely fantastic the way they utilized pretty much any piece of narrative storytelling that you could with the music and the actions and the way that they kind of show characters interacting. And I had a feeling something was going to happen very early on, just because you do like there's something also they do really well is they do these like little hints, and when you learn how to catch on to them and like how to spot them, it's like, oh no, like you know it's like, okay, something's gonna happen to this character. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but absolutely love this episode. Thought it was fantastic. Also really like this episode. This one is a lot more focused around Jace, Heimerdinger, and Echo. I'm not gonna go too much into things, but again, you'll probably see some of these photos here, and obviously, those are minor spoilers, but that's just what's on the IMDb website. I'm not gonna talk too much about what is going on. I would say episode 8 is kind of a culmination where everything that has been kind of moving around in the background that has been slowly happening throughout the episodes finally boils up to a point where you are getting to that final climax and it's setting up for this final confrontation. And then obviously episode 9 is that final confrontation and that ending, and leaves a lot of open things, but I think that is also intentional because they did say Arcane was meant to be 2 seasons and that they planned on using the other money for other spin-offs, and a lot of people wanted them. A lot of people are complaining about like certain things not being um, tied up, but I think that again that's intentional because I think they want to focus on other characters within different parts of the world, so that way they can introduce other legends who are within those different parts of the world in a new series and expand more on the lore, because that is something that they have stressed a lot about, that they want to expand on the League of Legends lore and adapt it. So them taking more time on our main set of characters here in, was it Piltover, I believe, isn't really in their plan. That doesn't mean that we're not going to see some of these characters later on, because as we'll go over in spoiler sections with some of the theories I've seen and some of the rumors, they will absolutely be, we'll absolutely see some of them. But this main story with this main specific group of casts, I think, is over. So this one, I really did like the ending a lot. I wouldn't. It's an easy 9. I'm just not sure if I want to give it that 10, because man, it's really hard. I mean, obviously, I loved these 2 episodes. The ending to both parts 1 and 2 is absolutely fantastic. And again, like all these episodes, such good quality. This was a pretty good ending. Don't get me wrong, like it was really good. I don't know if I would say it was perfect though. So I think I'll give it a 9. I might be open to a 10, but that's it. And then I know if I do basic math, I could probably get this, but I'm gonna just bring out the calculator real quick. So that's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 9 times 6 plus an 8 plus 20 for the 2 tens divided by the 9 episodes. Score of 9.11 is my average rating for, or I guess what is technically the average episode rating, or what could just be interpreted as the entire season rating, as a 9.1, which again, I still think this is arguably the greatest anime TV show we have ever seen. And with that being said, I think we will be getting into spoilers talks in just a moment. So see you there. Welcome to spoilers. But before we, I guess, probably just go over like um, some of the minor complaints I saw online because I don't really have that many complaints about this, to be honest with you. But some of the major complaints I saw were mostly just people being like, it was either rushed or they wanted more filler. And I guess like certain like Mel probably could have used a lot more. We probably could have used a lot more with Mel, specifically around her powers, because she learns how to use them in like one episode. But besides for that, I don't really see how else you can add more to it without it just being like straight up filler and kind of useless. Especially when they've already made it clear that they want to expand on more parts of the League of Legends universe and that there's already 3 other projects that they've begun working on. Um, and a lot of people were complaining about like, oh, they left a lot of things open, but if they have 3 other programs that they're fucking working on, of course they're gonna leave some shit open. That way they can just naturally transition with certain characters into those things. Like for example, Mel going back to Noxus, I think is the what her home country is called, right? Because obviously she inherits the throne with Mbessa's death, and she still has the whole thing with the black roses that she needs to figure out, right? So there's a whole lot they could still do with that. Like they can do that. Obviously, they hint at Jinx surviving, and she goes on the blimp that Powder mentioned leaving Piltover with or whatever. And oh my god, I know a lot of people were talking about how she's going to a certain place because of how she's very heavily connected to the lore of, I think, what is it, Lux? I think Lux is the name of that champion that she's like Jinx is heavily connected with. So there's that whole situation, right? Like there's going to be a handful of things that they're going to be able to do, and it's going to be great, and we're going to still see some of the characters. We're just not going to see the entire cast that we're used to, which I think is just kind of people wanting to see more of that cast. But besides for that, there just wasn't really anything that great. And obviously, earlier I mentioned that one dumbass who was like, "Oh, this is a Game of Thrones type of ending," which in order for that to be a Game of Thrones type of ending, you're going to have to hop through multiple fucking, what was it called? Or what the fuck was that thing even called? Like Arcane? What the fuck do they call it? Like Arcane portals, I guess. Like the amount of alternate universes you're gonna have to jump through to find a way that this is close to Game of Thrones ending. Like they are not even close. Like they are literally alternate universes apart, right? You cannot compare one of the worst endings ever to like, oh, Arcane, right? Arcane is one of the greatest shows ever, and its ending was really good. I don't want to say it was like the greatest thing ever, right? Because they did leave a lot of things open, which they did intentionally, but it's also nowhere as fucking bad as Game of Thrones. But either way, Echo, fucking goat, love him, right? But he's the only real character without any like negative flaws or like a negative flaw. At least him doing something kind of bad, which I think is just him not having enough screen time. Is kind of just the main thing of it, because everyone else who does do something bad or is in like a morally gray area is just because they have the good intention of trying to do something or have the intention of trying to do something good, and they end up making a mistake, right? With obviously season 1 we had Jace and Max like killing the kid, and then a little bit here in season 2 where it shows some of the after effects of Hextech on like Echo's tree, and he goes and he sees the future. He goes and try and kill Victor in that whole situation, and then of course that ends up triggering Victor to seek Sing or to accept Sing's help, and Mbessa uses Sing and fucking Victor to try and take over fucking city and shit, right? Which would have resulted in the post-apocalyptic timeline and all that fancy junk. But also, speaking of the timelines, right? I saw so many people being like, when they were talking about fluffing up the arcs, they were like, "Oh, I want to see so much more of the alternate timelines." Like, how much more do you want to see, right? Because one, Jace's alternate timeline that he went to the fucking future where Victor wins and everyone's just fucking dead. There is nothing else to explore there, right? And I'll admit, when I first watched it, I thought the hooded figure was actually Jace himself because of the fact that when he falls down the pit, he breaks his arm, or not his arm, he breaks his leg, and he breaks down his hammer to make a brace for himself. The handle kind of looks like the staff that the hooded figure had, but obviously now we know that's just fucking Victor, right? But like that, pretty fucking simple. And then also Echo, they gave Echo enough time to do what he needed to do in that fucking alternate timeline, right? He goes, he interacts with everyone, he gets closure with the father figure, right? The storefront guy. He gets that. He goes and he spends time with Powder, who he loved as a kid, and obviously in this timeline, or with Powder kind of being gone and Jinx being there, right? It's was good. It was closure for him, but he also admits that he has people that like when Heimerdinger is like, "Oh, this is a really nice reality. We could just stay here." Right? Echo says, "No, we have to go back. There's people that need us." Right? And he was 100% correct. So he goes, he gets that closure. He kind of gets that happiness that he never really got growing up. And then he goes back, he goes, he saves the day. Still ends obviously with the only fucking character in the show that doesn't get a semi-happy ending, which is just so fucked up, even though Jinx is alive. But obviously, Jinx is going to be off going to whatever country to meet with Lux. But, like, oh my gosh, man. I don't really think there is like anything else you could do besides making it like super fluffed out. I just don't think that was a part of their design. And honestly, I think that would negatively impact the way a lot of people would view this series. Because I think one of the reasons why the series is so good is because there is no fucking filler. Like it does move along pretty fast and they do get to things very well. And I guess that is a double edged sword because like for some of the heavier things that happen, you don't really get an insane amount to like breathe or room to breathe, I guess. But either way, I thought it was perfectly fine. Or I guess not perfectly fine, I thought it was fine. Um I guess there could also be a problem with the structure of the season because obviously they stay in three parts. So if you watched it in those three parts, you would have consumed it the way they intended to, which I think is pretty evident, considering that parts one and two pretty much mirrored each other, where episode one and two were um, the two separate viewpoints or two separate reactions through the viewpoints of top and bottom side and those corresponding characters from season one. And then four and five was the same thing except for what happened in episode three. And then seven and eight were just more of like culmination build up of what happened at the end of episode six. And then obviously with it slowly building up and kind of bringing it all together to set up the grand finale of episode nine. So part three was the only part where it was really different, but that was just because it needed to be, because they needed to kind of wrap everything together and prop it up for the stakes of the finale, right? So again, I didn't really have that much problem with it. Um, Wish Echo could have gotten a little bit more screen time, obviously, just because he's the only character that doesn't do anything like truly bad, doesn't make any like terrible decisions. But again, with how great this show is, I really hope that we do get a little more Echo. But oh my gosh, dude, Isha, this is for you. Oh man, probably one of the best scenes I've ever seen in my life. The way the way they hinted at it, right? very first part of the episode. Um, oh, am I blanking on the name? Vi. Vi drops the gauntlets. She looks at the orbs, right? And then you see her put something in her backpack right after walking by them and seemingly snatching them, put them in her pocket. Later on, um, she obviously ends up sacrificing herself, and the music and the way everything is portrayed, like, it's such a good fucking scene. It is absolutely fantastic. But I it's weird. You can say that about pretty much everything, right? Like the way they implement the music, also the music is just as good as season one. It was fucking phenomenal. But the way they write the characters as well, so fucking good. A lot of them have good intentions, but something happens and it pushes them to make these bad decisions or make these, yeah, I guess bad decisions or like bad thoughts, right? Obviously Caitlyn is radicalized by the death of her mother, and even though she has her fights with Vi very early on, as she kind of slowly creeps away from that grip, it is ultimately Vi who does kind of snap her back out of it. And you do kind of see it too. And I saw a meme about it where I was like, oh, Kate's like a sleeper agent who only activates when she hears Cupcake from Vi, right? And like in that scene in particular, like you see her eyes kind of perk up, and like you see like her, you can see her kind of like perk up, and like her eyes kind of glow up a little bit, where that love kind of does catalyst to her fully coming back and being the true Kate that she is. And you can say the same thing about Jinx and Vi with each other, in the way that them trying to save Vander completely rebuilt their relationship, and the way it has changed Jinx and the way Jinx has evolved this entire season after killing Silco. And everything is just the way the characters grow from their mistakes, and they embrace each other and they embrace the ones that they love to form these new connections is just absolutely phenomenal, right? Like you see so many you see so many of these like modern shows now that try and implement these things that Arcane has, and they just do it so fucking poorly because they focus on other things, or they just don't have the experience. And it's just, oh my god, Arcane truly is one of the greatest pieces of media I've ever seen in my life. But yeah, and then I don't really know what else to talk about because like the animation is fantastic. That combined with the amazing songs, like again, soundtrack was so fucking good. Like everything felt so great. And then with them hinting it towards everything, and us knowing that there's three other projects, like it's just so exciting. And I felt really happy and fulfilled with it. I know some people had some of the problems, like I mentioned earlier, but I think this is a masterpiece. I think this is near perfect as you can get it. I might revisit it later on down the road, maybe in like a year. Maybe I have some different changes, maybe whatever. But if you guys want to see the Gladiator tier review for tomorrow, subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you like the video, you know what to do. Let me down below. Did you guys prefer season one or season two? Did you guys think the finale was bad? Did you think it was Game of Thrones bad? Um, just let me guys know what you overall thought, and I'll see you guys next time. I got a bottle of wine I need to finish, so peace out.